They are introspective to the core. These are the kind of people who are not merely thinking beings. They are observers of their own thoughts, travelers of their own inner landscapes. Their consciousness is a deep mirror, reflecting not only what they see in the world, but also what the world stirs within them. For them, life is not just about living, it's about understanding why they live, how they feel, and what it all means in the greater scheme of existence. Their solitude is not an escape from others, but a descent into themselves. In a world obsessed with noise, they are the quiet ones who choose to listen to the hum beneath the chaos. When you sit with such a person, you may feel the weight of their silence. It's not an awkward silence. It's alive, thoughtful, heavy with meaning. They don't rush to fill every space with words, because they know that silence often reveals what language hides. They are not afraid of the stillness most people run from, because in that stillness they encounter their truth. They meet their fears, their dreams, their wounds, and their wisdom. Introspection is not something they practice, it is something they are. It's the water they swim in, the air they breathe, the rhythm that gives structure to their very being. To the outside world, they can appear distant, detached, or even indifferent. They may not easily share their inner life because they've learned that not everyone listens to understand, most listen to respond. Their mind is layered, filled with reflections that cannot be reduced to small talk or surface exchanges. When others ask, "What are you thinking?" they often hesitate to answer, not out of secrecy, but because their thoughts are not easily condensed into neat sentences. They dwell in questions, in nuances, in paradoxes. They are aware that truth is not a single statement, but a spectrum of understanding. Such people tend to analyze not just what happens, but why it happens. They don't simply feel emotions, they dissect them. When anger arises, they ask what pain hides behind it. When sadness visits, they explore its roots instead of distracting themselves. When joy appears, they trace its source and examine whether it's authentic or borrowed from the validation of others. Their mind is a microscope, constantly zooming in on the subtle mechanisms of the psyche. They don't just react, they reflect, they reinterpret, and they grow. This level of self-awareness is both their strength and their curse. They see what others overlook, but they also feel what others can easily ignore. Their introspection brings clarity, but also heaviness. When you dive deeply into the self, you inevitably encounter shadows. They have faced theirs many times. The doubts, the regrets, the parts of the soul that ache to be seen yet fear exposure. Instead of suppressing them, they observe them, learning the language of their own darkness. They know that avoiding the shadow only makes it stronger. And so they turn inward, not to wallow, but to witness. They know that every unresolved emotion is a message from the unconscious, every recurring thought a signal from the depths. Their relationships often reflect this same inward intensity. They crave connection that mirrors their depth, not companionship that distracts them from themselves. They don't seek friends to escape loneliness. They seek souls who understand it. They yearn for someone who can speak the language of silence, who can sit beside them without forcing conversation, who can explore ideas that stretch beyond the visible world. But because such people are rare, they often walk alone, not out of pride, but out of preference. They would rather have solitude filled with authenticity than company filled with emptiness. Introspection also grants them an unusual kind of vision. They notice the undercurrents in human behavior, the unsaid motives behind words, the hidden fears behind anger, the quiet longing behind laughter. They can sense when someone is being genuine and when they are performing. This perceptiveness often makes others uneasy because they can't easily hide behind facades in the presence of an introspective soul. The introspective person doesn't judge. They simply see, and their seeing is disarming. It's the kind of gaze that penetrates beyond personality into essence. However, living with this constant awareness can be exhausting. They carry the weight of understanding too much. They notice the flaws in systems, the contradictions in people, the impermanence of joy, and the subtle hypocrisies of social life. Sometimes they wish they could just turn off their mind, stop analyzing, stop feeling everything so deeply. But they cannot. The same mind that gives them insight also demands solitude, reflection, and space to process. Crowds drain them because they absorb every emotional vibration like a sponge. To recharge, they must retreat, not out of misanthropy, but to restore the delicate balance between inner and outer worlds. When others chase pleasure, they chase meaning. When others seek validation, they seek understanding. They would rather spend hours contemplating a single idea than participate in 100 meaningless conversations. They find comfort in books, art, philosophy, music, things that allow them to reflect and feel without pretense. The outer world may call them loners, but they are simply souls who have chosen depth over distraction. They know that being alone is not the same as being lonely. Solitude is their teacher, not their prison. Their introspection also brings them closer to truth. They have learned to question not only society's values, but their own. They examine their motives, dismantle their beliefs, and reassemble themselves over and over in pursuit of authenticity. They understand that most people live in reaction to the external world, chasing approval, success, and comfort, while the introspective person turns inward to find what truly matters. This is not self-absorption, but self-knowledge. It is the courage to look at oneself without flinching, to face both beauty and brokenness with equal honesty. They carry a quiet wisdom that grows not from experience alone, but from reflection upon experience. For every failure, they ask what it revealed about their character. For every heartbreak, they uncover a deeper understanding of love. For every silence, they discover a new dimension of themselves. While others move from moment to moment, they remain students of the invisible, those inner movements that shape destiny more than circumstance ever could. And though they may appear isolated, within them lives a profound connection to the greater whole, because to know oneself deeply is to glimpse the universal. Their introspection becomes a bridge between the personal and the cosmic, between what is human and what is eternal. They do not just live. They observe life unfolding through them, as if they are both the participant and the witness of their own becoming. They possess a deep emotional radar. These are the people who feel the world before they understand it. They walk into a room and instantly sense the invisible, the tension in the air, the unspoken resentment, the quiet sadness hidden behind polite smiles. They are not reading expressions, they are reading energy. Their sensitivity is so finely tuned that they can detect the slightest emotional shift in others, as if they carry an antenna wired directly to the human soul. They sense tone more than words, intention more than action, And what is not said often speaks louder to them than what is expressed aloud. This emotional radar is not something they acquired through effort. It is their natural state of being. From an early age, they notice things others missed. The moment a parent's voice trembled, the subtle change in a friend's mood, the heavy silence after an argument that everyone else had already forgotten. They learned that people rarely mean exactly what they say, and that emotions often contradict words. This realization made them cautious, observant, and inwardly alert. They learned to listen with more than their ears and to see with more than their eyes. Their sensitivity allows them to connect deeply, but it also burdens them with emotional noise. They can feel drained after a simple conversation, not because they dislike people, but because they absorb what others emit. The sadness that someone hides behind a smile, the envy behind a compliment, the anxiety behind laughter. They pick up on it all and carry it within themselves. Their heart becomes a container for energies that are not theirs, yet they feel them as if they were. This can make them seem moody or withdrawn, but in truth, they are processing waves of emotion that others have long disowned. When you talk to them, you might notice their eyes studying you, not in judgment, but in quiet recognition. They are searching for emotional truth beneath the surface. They can sense when you're pretending to be fine, when your "I'm okay" is a shield, when your joy is forced. Their empathy is not performative. It's instinctual. They feel what you feel, even when you've convinced yourself that you don't feel it anymore. And because of this, people often find themselves confessing things to them they've never said aloud. It's as if their presence creates a safe space where masks naturally fall away. But being this perceptive comes at a cost. When you constantly feel the emotional undercurrents of others, it becomes difficult to separate what belongs to you and what doesn't. They often find themselves overwhelmed, unable to understand why they suddenly feel heavy or anxious after being around certain people. They don't always realize that they've unconsciously taken on the emotional residue of others. Their inner world becomes crowded, not just with their own feelings, but with the collective moods of everyone they've encountered. To cope, they often retreat into solitude. Silence becomes a form of cleansing. In quiet moments, they can finally release the emotions they've absorbed and return to their own frequency. This is why they may need more alone time than others, not because they dislike company, but because they need to recharge their emotional clarity. Crowds gossip, and chaos disorient them. They function best in environments of honesty and calm, where they can breathe without being pulled into the turbulence of others' inner storms. They are also the ones who sense when relationships are shifting long before words confirm it. They can feel the subtle cooling of affection, the faint rise of resentment, the quiet drift of emotional distance. While others are caught off guard by betrayal or conflict, they saw it coming long ago, felt it in their bones, and often grieved it silently before it even happened. This foresight doesn't make the pain easier. It only makes it lonelier, because when you see what others deny, you are left holding truths that no one else is ready to face. Their empathy is not limited to people. It extends to everything. They feel the moods of places, the energy of objects, the emotional residue of memories. A song can make them weep without reason. A stranger's sorrow can linger in their chest for hours. A dream can affect their waking mood as if it were real. They are open conduits, constantly translating the unseen language of feeling that most ignore. Their heart operates like a finely tuned instrument, playing melodies that only they can hear. This level of awareness often makes them natural healers, artists, and thinkers. They understand suffering intuitively and can comfort others not by words, but by presence. People often feel lighter after talking to them, unaware that the reason is because they've unconsciously transferred their heaviness onto them. The emotionally perceptive person rarely complains about this. They simply absorb, process, and release. Yet over time, this can leave them emotionally exhausted. To survive, they must learn boundaries, not as walls, but as filters. They must learn that empathy without discernment turns compassion into self-destruction. They struggle in a world that glorifies toughness and dismisses sensitivity as weakness. Society praises the loud and overlooks the observant. But while others react to what is visible, they respond to what is real. They may not always speak first, but when they do, their words cut through illusions. Their insight often unsettles people because they reveal what others try to hide, even from themselves. And though this can isolate them, it also grants them an uncommon wisdom. They know that emotions are the truest language of the soul, and that every feeling, no matter how uncomfortable, is a doorway to understanding. Because they feel so deeply, they crave sincerity in every connection. They cannot thrive in relationships built on convenience or pretense. They value emotional honesty over politeness, depth over entertainment. When someone speaks from the heart, they feel it like warmth spreading through their body. But when someone speaks with hidden motives, they recoil, even if the words sound kind. Their intuition rarely fails them. They can sense love disguised as manipulation, pity masked as care, and false humility hiding pride. Over time, this sensitivity shapes their entire worldview. They learn that every emotion has layers, every person carries wounds, and every silence speaks volumes. They know that pain unexpressed becomes energy that distorts relationships. They've seen people destroy what they love because they cannot face what they feel. And this understanding, though painful, gives them compassion that transcends judgment. They don't see people as good or bad, but as souls caught in different stages of self-awareness. Their deep emotional radar makes them both fragile and powerful. Fragile because they are exposed to everything, powerful because they can transform what they feel into understanding. They live as emotional alchemists, turning sensitivity into wisdom, empathy into strength, and sorrow into insight that others can't yet name. Their heart, though often heavy, becomes the most honest instrument of truth the world will ever know. They value authenticity over approval. These are the people who have stopped trying to be what the world wants and started becoming what their soul demands. They are not interested in applause, validation, or fitting in. They are interested in truth. For them, living authentically is not an act of rebellion, but an act of integrity. They understand that approval is fleeting, but self-respect endures. To live authentically means to risk misunderstanding, isolation, and even rejection, but for them, those are small prices to pay compared to the suffocation of pretending. From a young age, they sensed the subtle pressure to conform, to laugh when everyone laughed, to agree when silence felt safer, to wear the mask that made others comfortable. But deep within, something in them resisted. They could not force themselves to to participate in the performance of normality. They felt a quiet discomfort whenever they betrayed their truth to be liked. Over time, they began to recognize this discomfort as a signal, a message from the soul whispering, "This is not who you are." That whisper became their compass, guiding them away from imitation and toward authenticity, no matter how lonely that road seemed. Their authenticity is not loud or attention-seeking. It is grounded, calm, and unshakable. They don't announce who they are. They simply live it. You can sense it in their energy, in the way they speak without pretense, in how they remain the same, whether they are praised or ignored. They do not need the world to mirror their worth back to them, because they have already found it within. They have made peace with being misunderstood, because they know that truth often sounds strange in the ears of those still living in illusion. These individuals do not measure their value by popularity or recognition. They understand that the crowd celebrates what is familiar, not what is real. The moment you start thinking for yourself, you threaten the collective comfort of conformity. They have experienced how authenticity can provoke insecurity in others, how speaking the truth can make people defensive, how refusing to follow the herd can make others call you arrogant or distant. But they have learned to stay rooted in their essence. Their goal is not to please but to align. When they enter a room, their presence has a quiet strength. They don't adjust their opinions to win favor or nod along to avoid tension. They have learned the sacred art of silence when speaking would mean betrayal of self. They know that pretending to agree is more dangerous than being disliked. Approval may bring short-term comfort, but it always demands a long-term cost, the erosion of self. They would rather face disapproval with integrity than admiration built on deceit. Their relationships reflect this same principle. They are drawn to people who are real, not perfect. They crave honesty more than flattery. They want conversations that challenge them, not interactions that inflate the ego. They can sense when someone is being performative, saying what sounds right instead of what feels true. And when they sense it, they quietly withdraw. They are not confrontational, but they refuse to participate in emotional theater. They know that connection without authenticity is a performance without soul. Their authenticity is often misunderstood as coldness, but it is actually deep respect for truth. They do not engage in gossip, manipulation, or drama, not because they are above it, but because it feels like a betrayal of spirit. They are allergic to hypocrisy. They notice when words don't match actions, when kindness hides control, when smiles conceal resentment. And though they rarely call it out, their silence speaks volumes. Their boundaries are firm, not because they lack compassion, but because they value energy too much to waste it on falsehood. They have learned that authenticity requires courage, the courage to stand alone, to disappoint others, to lose what was never meant for them. Every time they choose truth over approval, they shed another layer of fear. They realize that authenticity is not about being liked by many, but about being known by a few who see the real you. They would rather be hated for who they are than loved for who they are not. That is their quiet revolution. Society often teaches people to be agreeable, to prioritize harmony over honesty, to say what keeps the peace rather than what expresses the soul. But those who value authenticity have broken that conditioning. They have learned that harmony built on self-betrayal is false peace. They would rather endure temporary discomfort than live with permanent disconnection from their own essence. They are not here to maintain appearances. They are here to embody truth, even if it shakes foundations. Their path is not easy. Authentic people often experience loss, the loss of approval, of friendships that were conditional, of relationships built on illusion. But through each loss, they gain something greater, alignment. They no longer feel the need to edit their personality to fit different rooms. They can breathe freely because they no longer wear masks. Their sense of self is not dependent on external affirmation. It is anchored in an inner knowing that cannot be taken away. They speak their mind not to provoke, but to express. Their words are measured, intentional, and free from hidden motives. When they say no, it's not rejection, it's clarity. When they say yes, it's from the heart, not from fear. They do not manipulate emotions to maintain control. They allow relationships to evolve naturally, even if that means some people drift away. They have learned that not everyone can handle truth, and that's okay. Authenticity filters out what is not meant to stay. They carry themselves with a quiet dignity that comes from self-acceptance. They are not trying to prove their worth, they are simply living it. They know that true freedom is the ability to express who you are without apology. This freedom cannot be bought, taught, or given. It must be earned through self-awareness, through countless moments of choosing truth over comfort. Their authenticity becomes their sanctuary, their compass, their protection against the chaos of the collective mind. They do not chase validation because they know that approval from others is the cheapest form of nourishment. It feeds the ego but starves the soul. They would rather be nourished by meaning, by purpose, by self-honesty. They've discovered that peace comes not from being accepted, but from accepting oneself completely. And so they walk their path, unshaken by trends, untempted by applause, unmoved by judgment. Because they understand that to betray oneself is the greatest form of abandonment, and to live authentically is the only way to truly belong to one's own soul. They have a fierce sense of independence. These are the people who have learned to stand alone, not because they wanted to, but because life taught them that sometimes solitude is safer than dependency. Their independence is not born of pride, it is born of survival experience and an unwavering desire for self-mastery. They understand that relying too heavily on others can dilute their strength, and they would rather carry their burdens in silence than surrender their freedom for comfort. To them, autonomy is sacred. It is the language of dignity, the mark of inner strength, the sign that they have built a foundation no one else can shake. From an early age, they sensed the instability of external validation. They noticed how people's opinions could shift, how loyalty could vanish, and how dependence often led to disappointment. Somewhere along the way, they made a silent vow to themselves, I will not be controlled by anyone's absence. That vow shaped them. It taught them to become their own source of stability, to create security from within rather than seek it from without. While others found safety in attachments, they found it in self-sufficiency. They built an internal world so rich and grounded that the outside world could no longer define them. Their independence manifests in every area of their life. Emotionally, they do not cling. When love comes, they welcome it with open arms, but when it leaves, they do not beg it to stay. They have known the pain of loss enough times to realize that attachment is not ownership. They love deeply, but without desperation. Their heart is strong enough to hold affection and freedom simultaneously. They can miss someone and still move forward because they have learned that no person is worth losing themselves over. Mentally, they think for themselves. They question everything, tradition, authority, and even their own beliefs. They have no interest in following the crowd or subscribing to ideas that do not resonate with their intuition. This independence of thought sometimes isolates them, as people often misunderstand those who refuse to conform. But they are not seeking approval. They would rather be alone with truth than popular with illusions. Their mind is their own kingdom, ruled not by external influence, but by inner clarity. Spiritually, they walk their own path. They do not need someone else to tell them what to believe or how to find peace. They explore meaning through direct experience, through silence, reflection, and intuition. They trust their connection to something greater, but they do not depend on doctrines or dogmas to define it. Their spirituality is personal, fluid, alaiva, a relationship between their soul and the unknown. In their independence lies reverence, not rebellion. They simply refuse to surrender their consciousness to collective conditioning. This fierce independence can make them seem distant or unyielding, but that perception arises from misunderstanding. They are not cold. They are cautious. They do not shut people out. They simply open up slowly, ensuring that connection does not become captivity. They have been in situations where dependence turned to manipulation, where kindness was exploited, where vulnerability was mistaken for weakness. Those experiences taught them that love without boundaries is self-erasure. So now they protect their autonomy as one protects fire in the wind, shielding it carefully, knowing it is the source of their light. They prefer to solve problems on their own, not because they distrust others, but because they have faith in their resilience. When life challenges them, they turn inward, first consulting their intuition before seeking external advice. They know that too many voices can drown out the quiet wisdom of the soul. They might ask for help when necessary, but they never expect to be rescued. Their inner dialogue is steady, filled with self-assurance earned through struggle. Every obstacle they've faced has reinforced one truth: I am capable of surviving myself. That realization has become their anchor. Financially and professionally, their independence shines as discipline and self-reliance. They are driven not by competition, but by the desire to create something that reflects their essence. They are not comfortable depending on others for sustenance because they associate dependency with vulnerability. They work hard, not for applause, but for freedom. The freedom to choose, to move, to create without being beholden to anyone's expectations. Their ambition is quiet but relentless. They understand that true success is not status. It is self-direction. Emotionally, their independence is often misunderstood as aloofness. People sometimes think they do not need anyone, but that is not true. They need connection, but they will never sacrifice their individuality for it. They can love deeply while maintaining their own identity. They do not lose themselves in relationships, they expand within them. They understand that two whole individuals create a stronger bond than two halves, seeking completion. They are not afraid of intimacy, but they refuse to depend on it for wholeness. This self-sufficiency also gives them an unusual calm in chaos. When crises arise, they don't panic or seek immediate reassurance. They pause, assess, and act with clarity. Their independence has trained them to trust their instincts. They have faced darkness alone and discovered that their own strength was the light that guided them out. That knowledge gives them confidence that cannot be shaken by circumstance. They know that everything external can vanish, yet they will remain. However, independence is not without its shadows. Sometimes they struggle to let others in. They find it difficult to ask for help even when they need it. They fear dependency so deeply that they can become overly self-contained, building emotional walls that protect but also isolate. They might appear unapproachable or overly private, but beneath that armor lies a longing to be understood without being confined. Their independence, while empowering, can sometimes harden into isolation. But even in that solitude, they find meaning. They are constantly balancing the need for connection with the need for autonomy, walking the fine line between freedom and closeness. They are not easily influenced, not easily swayed by trends, opinions, or promises. Their compass points inward, guided by self-trust. They live by principles rather than popularity. They make decisions based on what aligns with their truth, not what earns them acceptance. This makes them both admirable and intimidating, because independence of this magnitude exposes the dependency in others. It reminds people of what they've given away, their power, their voice, their will. They live with an awareness that everything external is transient: relationships, possessions, recognition. What endures is the self that remains when all else falls away. Their independence is a declaration that they will never abandon that self again. They have built a home within their own being, a place no one can invade or dismantle. And from that home, they move through life with quiet confidence, unafraid of solitude, unafraid of change, unafraid of walking alone, because they have discovered that the one who learns to depend on their own soul is never truly without companionship. They are energetically selective. These are the people who have learned that not every presence brings peace, not every interaction nourishes the soul, and not every connection deserves access to their inner world. They do not judge people by appearances, status, or words. They feel them. They sense energy as naturally as breathing, and it becomes the silent compass guiding every choice they make. Their intuition has become their boundary. They can tell within moments whether a space will lift them or drain them, whether a person's intentions are pure or masked in charm. Their sensitivity is not weakness, it is wisdom sharpened by experience. They have learned the hard way that energy never lies. Words can deceive, but vibration never does. They have been around people whose smiles were warm, but whose energy carried envy, around conversations that sounded friendly, but left them feeling heavy. Over time, they began to notice patterns, how certain company left them restless, how certain environments clouded their clarity, how certain interactions made them feel smaller. These realizations turned their awareness inward. They stopped trying to please everyone and started asking one essential question. How does this feel to my spirit? This question became their silent filter, the unseen gatekeeper of their peace. They no longer force themselves to stay in places that exhaust them or maintain relationships that dull their light. When energy feels wrong, they withdraw, not out of arrogance but self-preservation. They understand that constant exposure to chaos, gossip, or negativity erodes inner balance, and because their peace has become their priority, they protect it like sacred ground. Their absence from certain circles is not rejection, it is discernment. They know the cost of staying where they no longer grow. Their energetic sensitivity also makes them highly empathetic. They absorb what others feel, often without realizing it. A single conversation can linger in their body for hours. An argument can echo for days. A harsh tone can disturb their calm long after it ends. To most, this might seem irrational, but to them it is reality. They are emotional empaths, attuned to the invisible waves of human energy that most people overlook. They can feel when someone's words carry hidden pain, when a laugh hides fatigue, when a compliment is coated in comparison. Their radar detects the truth beneath performance, and though this ability gives them depth, it also requires constant cleansing. They recharge through solitude. Silence is their medicine, distance their therapy. Alone, they can release the energies they've unconsciously collected. They might go for long walks, spend hours near nature, or sit in quiet meditation. In these moments, they return to their own frequency. Solitude is not loneliness for them, it is recalibration. They are not running from people, they are returning to themselves. They know that if they do not cleanse their energy, they will carry emotional weight that is not theirs to bear. So they withdraw, recharge, and emerge lighter, ready to meet the world again with authenticity instead of exhaustion. Being energetically selective means they are also deeply intentional about their surroundings. They care about atmosphere, the lighting of a room, the tone of a conversation, the rhythm of an environment. They avoid chaos not because they are fragile, but because it disrupts their internal harmony. They choose friends who feel like peace, conversations that feel like growth, and environments that feel like truth. When they sense toxicity, they step away quietly, without confrontation or bitterness. They no longer try to fix or explain. They simply follow their energy. People sometimes misinterpret their selectiveness as snobbery or emotional detachment. But in reality, it is a form of self-awareness most never reach. They have learned that being constantly available to everyone is a subtle form of self-abandonment. They know that every yes to the wrong energy is a no to their own well-being, and so they move carefully, not out of fear, but out of understanding. They know that who they allow into their energetic field will influence their mood, their mindset, and even their sense of self. They have learned to choose connection not by comfort, but by alignment. Their energetic discernment extends beyond people. It includes what they consume. They are mindful of the music they listen to, the movies they watch, the social media they scroll through, the conversations they entertain. They have realized that everything carries energy, and constant exposure to negativity, anger, or fear numbs the spirit. So they curate their intake like a form of spiritual hygiene. They surround themselves with what uplifts, inspires, and restores. Their life becomes a sanctuary, not because they isolate themselves from the world, but because they refine what they let in. This selectiveness often means they are misunderstood by those who thrive on noise. Others may call them distant, when in truth they are simply discerning. They are not anti-social, they are energetically wise. They understand that presence is currency and attention is power. To give both away carelessly is to drain the soul. They know the difference between solitude that heals and company that depletes. And they have stopped apologizing for choosing peace over participation. Their awareness allows them to notice when their energy shifts in someone's presence. They may feel sudden fatigue, tension, or anxiety around certain people, and they trust those sensations more than explanations. They know the body speaks before the mind comprehends. If they walk away from an interaction feeling smaller, they know something is off. If they leave feeling alive, seen and inspired, they know they have encountered resonance. They measure connection not by words, but by vibration. They also understand that energy flows both ways. Just as they are affected by others, others are affected by them. Their calm can soothe, their insight can awaken, their silence can disarm. They are aware of the responsibility that comes with carrying balanced energy. When they walk into a space, they bring presence instead of pretense. They do not dominate rooms. They harmonize them. Their aura speaks long before they do, and those who are aligned feel at ease in their company. But even with this awareness, they are not immune to energy imbalances. Sometimes, despite their discernment, they give too much. They pour their light into people who mistake it for obligation, into relationships that consume rather than reciprocate. When this happens, they retreat deeper into reflection, reminding themselves that compassion must coexist with boundaries. They learn again and again that love without limits leads to depletion, and kindness without discernment leads to fatigue. Their self-awareness becomes their recalibration tool, the way they return from energetic overextension back to inner equilibrium. They are energetically selective because they have realized that energy is the essence of everything. Every thought, every emotion, every interaction leaves an imprint. They have seen how energy multiplies, how peace breeds more peace, how negativity attracts more chaos. And so they choose carefully what they allow to grow within them. They live by an invisible law of resonance. What I entertain, I become. This awareness shapes every aspect of their existence. They do not chase what glitters, they follow what vibrates with truth. They have mastered the art of sensing alignment, trusting that what feels calm is often right, and what feels forced is a warning from the soul.